It's our regular chat with Spratt, Amanda Spratt, fresh off the World Championships. We've spoken already to Sarah Roy about the race itself and the atmosphere, but I have to get your perspective. How was it to race with so much noise again?
Amazing. You almost felt like you've been starved of it, and it wasn't obvious till you were there in Flanders. And I think, it's always incredible racing in Flanders. But I think this was the first race in almost 2 years where the fans could come out in unrestricted numbers. They're cycling mad in this area, so they've been starved for that long, and it was incredible. Just you almost couldn't hear yourself think or speak. Amazing.
And then next year, the World Championships will be in Wollongong. So it's going to be an Australian World Championships. And a lot of people watching it from Australia, seeing that, are just holding out that hope of seeing what's looking like a return to normal in Europe. Hopefully that we'll be in that position this time next year.
Yeah, I think everyone can start getting excited in Australia. And I really hope that, I'm sure it's going to go ahead and the atmosphere there. And actually my first World Championships was the Australian World Championships in Geelong in 2010. And I remember how great the crowds were and how everyone was really supporting us there. So yeah, nothing better than a home World Championship. So yeah, I really can't wait.
We haven't seen the course yet for Wollongong next year. One of the big talking points out of the weekend in particular, both the women's race and the men's race, from my perspective in the commentary box, the best World Championships I've had the privilege to commentate on. And I put that partly down to the course because the course wasn't too easy and it wasn't too hard. And I'm hoping for something similar in Wollongong.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think, the Flanders course was a sort of course where there were about 300 points where the race could be won. You didn't go into the race thinking, okay, this is like the most critical sector. So I think that aspect as well, everyone wanted to be near the front the whole time, which just made the race hard, and you just didn't know when it was going to open up. And I mean, I know the Wollongong area, and I've raced in that area, grown up training with Gary Sutton and the N-Swiss crew down there. And from what I've sort of heard, I'm hoping that it will be that sort of in-between course, bit technical, up and down, and I really think they're going to create a spectacular course, and hopefully finishing on the beachfront would be pretty iconic.
It'll be beautiful to see those images beamed around the world. It will be magnificent. One of the other big talking points coming out of this year's World Championships for next year's World Championships is the announcement of an under-23 category for the women in the road race, but not having their own separate race.
Yeah, I have a fairly strong opinion about this. I know we've spoken a little bit about this, but I think, I saw a tweet from Niamh Fisher-Black basically saying that, we don't, combining the races, it creates a totally different dynamic for those under 23 riders, and they don't race to finish somewhere in the bunch and be rewarded for it. And she said basically, come back with a proper race when you're ready UCI. And I think for me, that was the perfect person to say something like that. Niamh is the World Tour leader in the young rider classification. She could probably win the elite in her own right while she's still in that category. And yet she's saying that. And I think, I've heard a few arguments around this. We don't have enough under 23s yet to have the separate race. But I also think if you create the separate race, you will have more under 23s. I know, you see a lot of under 19 riders come through. And okay, yeah, there are some exceptions that, make the jump relatively easy. I mean, Elisa Balsamo is still under 23, a new world champion. But I do think, you create that step and riders see, there's a goal between being junior and racing really with the seniors. So I think it comes hand in hand with that. You create the race and you will have more under 23s. And alongside that, I think having a combined race, you are also, it's to the detriment of the elite race in terms of what do national teams do? Do they weaken the elite team and bring in some under 23 riders that perhaps wouldn't be good enough to race with the elite team? And then, or, do you go half and try to win both? Or, it opens up a whole, can of worms with that and what's best. But yeah, I mean, comes back to what Niamh said is that, our best under 23 rider or one of our best under 23 riders, I think, they need a separate race.
Yeah, they absolutely need a separate race for a number of the reasons that you've just identified. It impacts on the race. If there's two races within the one race, then you can have a group that's got a couple of 23s in it, and they're the front of the race for their race, but then there's a group up the road that's just 30 seconds ahead that are battling out for the elite title, and it just becomes totally confusing also as a pitch to try and sell the sport to others. And then if you've got a sprint within a group that's going, say, for fifth place in the elites, but they're sprinting for first place in the under-23s. How confusing does that look as a promotional piece for the sport for people watching it for the first time? So as a marketing piece for the sport, and the UCI is responsible for selling the sport, it looks like an absolute mess. Secondly, and the more important point that you draw attention to, is they're making a statement that we don't have enough for that category in the women. That is garbage. Part of the reason we don't have enough for that category is because there isn't that category. So there's a lot of women who are lost from the sport, from the under-19s through the elites. They don't see that stepping stone. And when you start a junior football league in a small town and you don't have many under-9s, you're not going to get under-9s if you're only offering under-15s. You need to start an under-9s team to attract kids to go and play in that under-9s team, and eventually you'll get enough. They need to have a separate under-23 race. There's been an under-23 race for the men since 1996. The sport has been lagging behind for decades on equality. And this, although it was an attempt to do the right thing, it's an own goal by the UCI.
Yeah, I think we're 100% on the same page. I totally agree.
Yeah, so let's hope that before next year, the UCI actually changes its mind, because I think that's a good sign of leadership, is actually looking at a decision that you've made and having more information come to you and recognising, I think we've made a mistake here and we can fix it. There's an opportunity still for the UCI to fix it. The World Championships are 12 months out. Just because they've made that decision, it's not too late to change it.
Yeah, I think so. And change can come at any moment. And I think you're completely right. It just takes a bit of leadership there to make that final call.
Yeah, so watch this space and we'll keep lobbying for it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
So one of the other big steps coming next weekend for the first time, we're having a women's Paris-Roubaix. It's been known as the Queen of the Classics for so many years. And as I said to Sarah Roy earlier on, how can it call itself the Queen of the Classics without a women's race? What's the talk been like within the peloton about the first edition of Paris-Roubaix?
A lot of excitement, I think, is the biggest, the most overwhelming feeling. Maybe a little bit of fear. I think, there's the first time the women have raced it. We're not really sure how it's going to be. But, I know Matty Heyman, actually, at the World Championships, he was the DS for the men, and we were sort of just chatting to him before we left the World Championships and asking for a few tips. And his advice was ride the grass whenever you can. So try to avoid the cobbles. So, I don't know how that will be in the race itself. But, I think it's an inaugural event. I think it's going to be historic. It's going to be an exciting race, just an attritional race. And I think, everyone's just envisaging that final bit, the riding into the velodrome and racing around there and finishing at the velodrome using the iconic showers. I think, it's going to be a really historic day, and I can't wait to see what unfolds.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Another exciting piece at the back end of the season for you at Green Edge was at the Tour de Ardèche and a stage victory for Tennille Campbell, who's just been signed to the team this year from Trinidad and Tobago. And as part of the globalisation of the sport, it wasn't just an important win for Bike Exchange. It was an important win for cycling. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, there was so much happiness after that win for a number of reasons. Earlier in that tour, we'd had all of our bikes stolen. So, we were back on Bianchi's for that stage, but which was great. But I think, Tennille has also come through the UCI World Cycling Centre in previous years, sort of got talent picked and came across. And I know she's really wanting to, build cycling in her area, in her homeland, and really encourage more cyclists to come from there. And I think she's doing a fantastic job of that. And I think it's just building cycling more as a global sport. She sort of had a slow start to the season, and to finish off with that win. And it was a 10-person breakaway. And what a lot of people don't realize is she wasn't actually in that breakaway to start with. And she bridged across solo on a short climb. And, she sort of attacked him before we knew it. She was there. I don't know how she did it. It was pretty incredible. I wish I sort of had that sort of power. But I think, it wasn't a 2-person breakaway. She had to think about how to win from that sort of 10, 11 rider group. So I think it shows a lot of maturity on her side and really exciting signs for the future.
That's a good win. Take us back to the bikes being stolen. What was it like when you woke up in the morning? No bikes.
Yeah, so, it was a strange one. I heard the doors sort of slamming in the hotel at about 2, 3 in the morning and thought, what's happening? I don't know, just put your earplugs in and go back to sleep. So I went back to sleep and woke up at about 8:30, walked out of my room, and Pat, one of our mechanics, said, I've got a funny story to tell you. And I was like, and he's like, you don't have any bikes.
It's not that funny, the story so far, Pat. Where's the punchline?
And then he said, "Oh, you'll be yeah." Basically, we didn't have any bikes, and the mechanics were quickly rushing. And I mean, thank God we had, it's an incredible community, and sort of our director Alejandra was on the phone to different teams, seeing if we could, be helped out for that stage. And thankfully, everyone sort of came on board, which wasn't the easiest thing because we have a couple of incredibly tiny people in our team, such as myself and Anne. And then we have, on the other hand, some really tall riders like Lucy Kennedy and Tennille. So we're trying to sort of manage how we can get everyone to get through that stage.
Doesn't Tennille have the longest legs on the team, men or women?
Yes. And this was actually, I really noticed this actually when she won the stage and I went for the hug. And I actually couldn't hug her. I couldn't
you hugged her
reach
hip.
up high enough. So I hugged her hip. Like, I can't get there. But yeah, so that was a bit of a challenge to make sure she could get through that stage. But yeah, I mean, we managed it, and yeah, I mean, hats off and to our staff. I think the bikes were stolen at 2-3 in the morning, and I've heard people say you have security or didn't you have a system in place, and we do have a system in place. As soon as the truck was broken into, there's a phone call from the security company. But these are professional bike stealers. And I think, in the end, if they want to steal your bikes, they're going to steal your bikes. I mean, I know Trek Segafredo at Strada Bianca, they literally cut open the top of the truck and got the bikes out basically with a fishing, well, if you imagine a fishing hook, this is how I imagined it. But, so if they want to steal them, they're going to steal them. And I mean, it was just unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, this happened at 3 in the morning, and by the time we all got up at 8:30, the staff were in overdrive working things out. And you might think there'd been a lot of stress from us, but everyone was just like, okay, this has happened. How are we going to get through it? And I think that came because our staff were so calm. And I mean, I'm sure they got all their stress out in those 5 hours when we were peacefully sleeping. But yeah, it just shows, the environment you're in. If everyone's sort of calm, then, that rubs off on everyone. And we got through the stage, and thankfully we had all our Bianchis, or we had replacement Bianchis back with us for the stage after. So yeah, grateful we could have that sort of turned around so quickly.
So one of the heartwarming sides of that is when you see some of the worst of human behaviour, it so often brings out the best in human behaviour as well.
Yeah, you're spot on there. And I think, we saw that with the way, we had 3 different teams rally around us, and it just took a phone call, and no worries. Everyone can understand what a bad situation that is. And we were halfway through the tour, so of course we didn't want to be stopping the tour. And yeah, really grateful that everyone, it wasn't hesitation. It was just like, oh, okay, we'll see what we can do, find a bike. And yeah, so really grateful that we could get that support to continue.
Well, before I let you go, I assume you're not doing Paris-Roubaix, and this is just about off-season time for you.
You assume correctly. I will be happily watching Paris-Roubaix from my couch. Very much looking forward to that. But yeah, this is season end for me now. So yeah, time to have a bit of time off and refocus for some goals for next season.
Enjoy the off-season, Spratty. It's been well-deserved. And thanks for joining us each time on the podcast with the chat with Sprat.
Been a pleasure. Thanks, Matt.